what has happened, we talked about this a little bit earlier before Ray, but we're now in the disarmament period that was happening after the Cold War has come to an end. And we are now preparing to rearm. And there are quite a few steps that have been put in place this year, in fact, by the Biden administration. And so Professor Boyle is a past expert in international law relative to nuclear weapons and many other things, a professor at Indiana in the law school there, and has successfully, in some cases, successfully defended nuclear protesters, and has had a very active career in this field. And we have learned an enormous amount from his books, and so we wanted to start thinking again about international law and its intersection with this huge new program at Los Alamos and really nationwide, and our role here as being a supportive community, unnecessarily supportive community, because without Santa Fe and northern New Mexico providing housing and the living environment for all the people that are getting hired, this huge new project couldn't be successful. Thank you, Professor Boyle, for joining us, and we're all ears.
Well, Greg and Trish, thank you very much for having me out here to speak at this most important conference. Right now, the human race stands on the verge of nuclear self-extinction as a species, and with it will go most forms of life as we know it today. And this is a realistic possibility now in Ukraine, where it's been threatened, and also the reported public threat that Israel might use nuclear busting bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities. We have to understand that the nuclear age began in the criminal sins of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 8th, and then on August 6th, and then the 2 days later at Nagasaki. And these atomic bombings of the two cities violated at the time the Nuremberg Charter of August 8th that was signed 2 days after Hiroshima and 1 day before Nagasaki, that clearly determined these were crimes against humanity. They also violated the regulations annexed to Hague Convention number 4 of 1907, to which the United States government was a party, and even violated the United States War Department Field Manual 2710 on 1940. I've documented this in my book, The Criminality of Nuclear Deterrence, with all the footnotes there. There is a chapter on the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki if you want to have a look at it. So the start of any progress towards resolving the nuclear dilemma must come from the realization that nuclear weapons have never been legitimate instruments of state policy, but have always constituted instrumentalities of internationally lawless and criminal behavior. And that's sheer propaganda that the United States government had to drop bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki to prevent an invasion. The citations are in my book. But on a personal level, my father was in the Marine Corps at that time. He had invaded Saipan, Tinian, and Okinawa and was scheduled to invade Japan, where he would be among the first troops ashore because of his combat experience. And he never told me at all that bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki saved his life. As a matter of fact, instead of invading Japan, he landed at Nagasaki on September 24, 1945, to occupy Nagasaki. He never told me one word about what he saw there. I think it was just too horrific. And he never told my mother or anyone else about what he personally saw at Nagasaki. The use of nuclear weapons is prohibited in all circumstances under customary conventional international law. The Nuremberg Charter, Judgment and Principles, the Hague Regulations of 1907, to which the United States government is a party, the International Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, to which the United States government is a party, as well as the Genocide Convention Implementation Act, which is our own domestic implementing legislation. The four Geneva Conventions of 1949 and their additional Protocol 1 of 1977 that the World Court ruled in its advisory opinion on the legality of the threat or use of nuclear weapons were, quote, intransgressible principles of international law, unquote. They cannot be violated. And of course, there was a series of fundamental resolutions by the UN General Assembly condemning any use of nuclear weapons as an international crime. So, according to the Nuremberg judgment, soldiers would be obliged to disobey illegal orders with respect to launching and waging a nuclear war. All government officials and military officers who might nevertheless launch or wage a nuclear war would be personally responsible for the commission of Nuremberg crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, war crimes, grave breaches of the Geneva Convention, genocide, among other international crimes. Now, Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter prohibits both the threat and the use of force, except in cases of legitimate self-defense. And here, the proponents of nuclear weapons argue that, well, we have to threaten the use of nuclear weapons to defend ourselves from our adversaries. To the contrary, in the World Court advisory opinion on the legality, the threat or use of nuclear weapons, the World Court ruled almost unanimously that the threat to use nuclear weapons stands on the same grounds, lawful or unlawful, as the actual use themselves. So, therefore, you cannot threaten mass extermination lawfully because mass extermination violates all the sources of international law I already mentioned to you. So the threat to use nuclear weapons, that is nuclear deterrence, which is really nuclear terrorism, constitutes ongoing international criminal activity, namely planning, preparation, solicitation, and conspiracy to commit Nuremberg crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, genocide, war crimes, violations of the Geneva Conventions and the Hague Regulations to begin with. I think I'd ask Greg and Trish to circulate the chapter from my book, my recent book, World Politics, Human Rights, and International Law, that has all these arguments in more detail. And my recent analysis of the situation as of 2021, when Trump pulled us out of the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty and how deleterious that was to promoting the nuclear arms race. So I'm not going to repeat all those arguments here. Well, from these principles of international law, today's nuclear weapons establishment, like you have out there at Los Alamos, are criminal under basic principles of international law. It's not simply illegal, it's not simply immoral, but criminal under well-established principles of international law. And I think this idea of criminality of nuclear weapons establishment can be used to pierce through the ideology of nuclearism to which so many people have succumbed. Though I know not the people in this audience. That's why you're here. And again, Greg has my more extended analysis from my book that you are free to refer to, and you can circulate it however you want to, use it however you want to. So we have to abolish nuclear weapons before nuclear weapons abolish us. Now, this has led some international lawyers, especially those affiliated with the US government, to argue quite tautologically and disingenuously, since there exists a few nuclear weapon states in the world, nuclear weapons must somehow not be criminal because these other states possess them. In other words, this minority practice of maybe 9 states that have nuclear weapons by great powers sometimes negates the existence of these principles of international law I have cited to you. There's a simple response to that specious argument. When has a small gang of criminals, in this case the nuclear weapon states, been able to determine what is legal or illegal for the rest of the community by their own criminal behavior? What right do these nuclear weapon states have to argue, including the United States, that they have made criminal acts legitimate? None. Indeed, these nuclear weapon states, all of them, basically constitute a criminal conspiracy against the human race. I'm not here to justify any of them at all. And the Nuremberg Tribunal and the Tokyo Tribunal for the trial of the major Axis and Japanese war criminals made it very clear that a conspiratorial band of criminal states have no right to opt out of the international legal order by means of invoking their own criminal behavior as a test of the common denominator of international deportment. To the contrary, the entire human race since 1945 has been victimized by an international conspiracy of ongoing criminal activity carried on by all the nuclear states under this specious doctrine known as nuclear deterrence, which is really a euphemism for nuclear terrorism. And as a matter of fact, if you really research into the plans for the use of U.S. nuclear weapons, they've never been there for deterrence. I've actually been qualified as an expert in court on U.S. nuclear war plans. And those war plans basically at the heart call for an offensive first strike strategic nuclear weapons attack upon our alleged adversaries. And you can have a look in my book, The Criminality of Nuclear Deterrence, going back to 2002, where the list of states that we are planning to attack offensively. In the case of war between China and Taiwan, Israel, Arab states, Israel and Iraq, North Korea, South Korea, Russia, China, etc. So that's really what's at stake here. So these nuclear weapon states is no different, their conspiracy, from any other conspiracy by a criminal gang or band. They are the outlaws, and we are the sheriffs. That's what you're doing out there in New Mexico. The sheriffs upholding international law against the outlaws there at Los Alamos and the production of these plutonium hits that will trigger our thermonuclear weapons. And remember hydrogen bombs. And remember the Manhattan Project continued after World War II. But when it was announced that they were then going to move into the development of the so-called super, i.e. the hydrogen bomb, several of the Manhattan scientists quit as a matter of principle and denounced the super, the hydrogen bomb, as genocide. It could only be used for the purpose of genocide. And everything else is simply palaver, pro-nuclear propaganda. In light of these facts, as I've argued, every person around the world has a basic human right to be free from this criminal practice of nuclear deterrence, nuclear criminality, and its specter of nuclear extinction. So all human beings possess the basic right under international law to engage in nonviolent civil resistance activities for the purpose of preventing, impeding, or terminating the ongoing commission of these international crimes. Every citizen of the world community has both the right and the duty to oppose the existence of nuclear weapon systems by whatever nonviolent means are at his or her disposal. Otherwise, the human race will suffer the same fate as the dinosaurs, and the planet Earth will become a radioactive wasteland. And the time for preventive action is now. Just look at the situation there in Ukraine and Russia, and the threats made by the Russian government that if Ukraine releases long-range weapons on Russia with the approval of the United States government, it is now being contemplated. They are considering this now. They might respond with nuclear weapons. And then look at the situation right now in the Middle East, where it has been reported that Israel is considering using nuclear bunker busting bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities, which, by the way, are permitted under the NPT. Well, some estimates have been that if this happens, you could see 1.5 to 2 million people dying over there. So we are really at, I think, the edge of the nuclear precipice here today. And for that reason, I'm very happy to speak with you here. I know you're doing the best they can out there in Santa Fe to stop this, to do whatever is possible on this new round of escalation of the nuclear warfare establishment, new plutonium pits, new nuclear warheads, new nuclear delivery devices, and now the Sentinel that will take the place of the Minutemen. So with that, I thought I would conclude my preliminary comments and then open it up to the questions that Greg has kindly offered to moderate. Thank you.